a graduate student at the Colorado School of Mines, and I'm in the chemistry and geochemistry program, housed in the chemistry department.
I am a microbiologist. A microbiologist looks at things that are single cell, like cells living one by one in nature. And basically microbes are everywhere. And I also look at the viruses that infect these cells.
I specialize in corrosion, which is the metal is already part of a structure somewhere, so under those conditions, what can we do to prevent corrosion or decrease corrosion? Things like that.
I look at environmental contaminants at very low levels and try to find methods to detect them in the environment.
Right now I'm looking at how microorganisms degrade chemicals that could potentially cause cancer in water systems.
It was a homework. It was a homework about chemistry, and I came across the blast furnace, which is how you transform the mineral to iron. And I found really cool that in 9th grade I could understand every single step. I was like, oh, I'm really good at this. I like it.
I pretty much knew since I took my first chemistry class that I really liked the puzzles of figuring out chemistry, and so I decided when I was in high school that I wanted to be a chemist.
2nd grade, I had a very cool teacher who emphasized the importance of science and all the areas that it covered.
I think at a young age I always excelled in math and science, and then I was always encouraged throughout high school to continue on that path.
Sometimes I definitely had to work for it. I definitely didn't. I was not the smartest kid in the class all the time, but I also I was decent at it, and then I had some strengths in like writing and languages and that kind of stuff, so that really helped set me apart from some of the other engineers.
I really enjoy a lot of the science classes, but math is much more difficult for me, so I didn't enjoy the math classes as much. But I knew to be a good scientist I had to stick it through the math and keep going, so I tried my hardest just to pay attention and get through it.
I've definitely struggled through some of them. For example, in math, I think that some of the somewhere it's supposed to be easier, I thought were difficult, and then you get to more advanced math and I'm like, oh, I get it.
I didn't get the negative numbers thing. I was upset with it. I was like, no, they're all positive. What are you talking about?
Motivation might not be the right word. It was probably more determination. And with classes, it might feel like it goes on forever, but at least there is an end in sight. If you can just get through this one project or this one exam, whatever you got to do to just push through it, eventually it'll be over.
I would try to find a practical application for the math in my science and see why it was actually useful for what I wanted to do, so it wasn't just solving a problem on paper.
I just faced them as a challenge, and I like challenges. I like to learn about anything and everything, so that keeps me motivated to keep going in STEM.
I think the fact that science is always changing just makes everything so interesting. Nothing can get boring that way when things are being discovered all the time, or new ways to do things.
I like how science changes so often and that there's so many new avenues to explore, and even though if it's not my specialty in science, it's always just interesting to see what other people can come up with.
How it's always changing. All the time there's new softwares, there's new techniques, and every day we're looking for oil and gas, and we're looking for precious metals, and that's what geophysics does.
Definitely alternative energy. So I see that being our generation's biggest challenge, is trying to move away from traditional means of energy generation, and I think it's going to take a whole bunch of different alternative energy methods to really solve this problem that our nation is facing.
It's helped me think critical, I think.
I think it's made me become a more critical thinker.
I think it's made me a little more critical and conscious.
It's like not being afraid of testing new things. That's what I've learned.
I think overall, the STEM fields have helped me become a better problem solver with life.
I'd say just keep on doing it. With a little hard work and motivation, you can do anything and you'll have the world in the palm of your hands. You'll be able to go anywhere with that.
Girls really need to understand how smart they are and not be afraid of going to science. It's fun, it's nice, it's exciting.
My advice is to go with the subject that you're interested in. You learn so much more, and it's so much more fun if you do something that you think is fun.
I think you just have to be willing to try different things. If I didn't take my class in volcanoes, I would have never fell upon geochemistry, and maybe would have been med school, which I don't think I would have liked as much.
Do what you love. If you're interested in science, absolutely go for it. And you're gonna make mistakes, and that's okay, and it doesn't mean that you don't belong in science. It's just something we all go through. We're all gonna make mistakes. Just don't get discouraged.
Most of the time, it was just wanting to gain that knowledge and to be better and do better for myself.
I don't think that when I was very young that science was necessarily a career option, but when I started high school then I decided to find it for myself that I really enjoyed it and decided to push myself into that direction.
My mom's an accountant, my dad's a banker. So I was one of the first people in my family to go into a scientific field, but they were still very supportive.
It's totally okay to be a nerd about stuff. It's totally okay to have a special interest about something really silly. It's fun. It took me all the way to a different continent. Like, the interest I had in a very specific science subject took me all the way from Europe here, and I'm getting paid to do something that I think is fun.
It's great to be a woman in my field because we get a lot of opportunities. A lot of companies are interested in expanding to get more diversity in their offices and more diversity in their companies. And so you can have a lot more options when you graduate. You can almost pick the companies that you want to work for because they would love to have more diversity. And so with that, you can help empower other women to do the same thing, because it's all about equality and making sure that women are taken seriously in math and science.